My fiance cheated on me with my father. Me 27 male, fiance 26 female, call her L. My father 52 male, call him B. My mother 50 female, call her R. Like many who have had something like this happen, I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here we are. I've never used Reddit, but I've seen stories from here on TikTok, so I thought I'd give this a shot for any advice you all could give me. From listening to some other stories, you all like backstory. I'll try and be as clear and precise as I can, but it's only been a week, so if I start to lose it during the telling of this, I'm sorry. Elle and I met in her freshman year of college. We were both dorm in the same building where we eventually met. We later found out we lived 2 towns away from each other, so whenever we went home, I let her drive with me. It was only added like 20 minutes, so it was no big deal. After multiple trips and hanging out at school, we started to date. I have a close-knit family, as did she, so we told our families right away. I had met hers plenty of times when dropping her off, but it was nothing more than an introduction and exchanging pleasantries. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms, and our relationship grew. I was a year ahead of her, so when I graduated, I went home where I was offered a good job with great pay. I visited her at school whenever I got the chance, and whenever she came home, we would make time for each other. After she graduated, she moved in with me as both of our jobs were in the city near where we grew up. Like me, she was offered a position at the company she works at now with great pay. After living together for about 3 years, I proposed, and we have been planning our wedding since. Now on to the part you're all reading for. Looking back, there was plenty of things I overlooked that I just wrote off, thinking my father was just trying to welcome my ex into our family. Things like my father calling her all the time, and if I was around, they would just tell me they were talking about the upcoming family party or something along those lines. One time Elle was in the shower and her phone rang. I seen it was my dad, so I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded both upset and surprised that I picked up. I then asked what's up. He responded that he wanted to talk to Elle about my mother's birthday that was in a week, and after a minute we ended the call. Even typing this out now, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. On the day I found out, it was like any other day. Elle had Thursdays off, so she made breakfast for both of us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized I had forgotten some paperwork I would need for a meeting I had at 3 p.m. I shrugged it off and told myself I would just go home at lunch to get it. Elle texted me throughout the day talking about all the casual stuff a couple talks about, like what do you want for dinner? I did the laundry. Do you want me to hang it up for you? Blah blah blah. I didn't think it necessary to text her I was coming home for lunch, so when it came around, I just left work and went home. When I got home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in our parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it and just parked and went into our building. When I opened the door, I was met with a scene out of a movie where a man comes home early and catches his spouse cheating. Such a cliche. There was a trail of clothes, both his and hers, leading to my bedroom, and the sound of faint moans echoed through my apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust, but if you were a fly on my wall, you would see what looked like a statue. I just couldn't move. When I finally snapped to, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone to record. I picked up all the clothes that were on the floor and threw them into the hall of the building. After I filmed the walk to my bedroom, the door was open. I stood in the doorway filming for about a minute, then flipped on the lights. They both jumped at the sudden light and looked at me. And to my utter shock, it was my father in the bed with her. After the initial stun, my father noticed I was recording and started to panic. He tried to find anything to cover himself and telling me to stop recording. He found a towel and wrapped it around himself and started to walk toward me. I told him, if you don't want to get hurt, stop coming to me. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw. His head bounced off the door and slumped to the ground. Elle shrieked. I aimed the camera at Elle and said, concerned about your F-buddy, but nothing to say to your fiancé. My father woke up after about a minute nap, and I told them I just needed to come pick something up for work, so I'm heading back now. If either of you pieces of S are here when I get back, I'll send this video to everyone you know. I ended the video, looked at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, you're dead to me. You're no longer my father, but you might want to go home and talk to Mom because I'll be talking to her very soon. I sat in my car for a while until one of the bosses at work called to ask where I was. I told her I was on my way back right now. When I got to her office to hand her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking what was wrong with me. I told her it was nothing and I'd be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down, and she noticed some blood on my collar and stood up, rushed to me and said, "You're bleeding." I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it in its entirety. She was introduced to Elle a few times, but never my father. She sat there silent for a moment until it finally clicked that my fiancée was cheating on me, but not only was she cheating, it was with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting I take some time off, but I told her I can't go back there right now, that I just need a minute and I'd be fine for the meeting, and I have another shirt in my office. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me after the meeting and asked how I could do that, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. I then came home and I was alone for the first time in a very long time. I just don't know what to do. I definitely need to get the hell out of this apartment. I just can't live here anymore, and there's no possible way I'm sleeping in that bed. I know not only do I have to go get checked out for STDs, but I think I broke something in my hand. I tried to get into contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she would get lunch with me, and I'd tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I decided to get into my car and go to my mother's house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I would say and how I would say it. That made me start to panic. I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband is screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my car for a moment to calm down and gather my thoughts. I was in my car for a few minutes when my mother threw her front door open, so I stepped out of my car. She started cursing at me. She said how dare I come to her home after I hit my father for trying to break up a fight between Elle and I. She called me every name in the book and called me an abuser. She told me I needed to leave since Elle isn't ready to forgive me yet, and that if she's smart she hopefully never will. Yes, apparently my father took Elle to my family's home and told my mom that Elle and I argued, and when my father tried to spot it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom, because your husband is effing my fiancé, that's why I hit him. If you can't take my word for it, I have a video, I'll send it to you, but because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're just as shit of a mom as my piece of shit father." Her face dropped. She looked like what I must have looked like when I first walked into my apartment and caught them. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. My mom took hers out and turned it on. She pulled up the video and watched up until the part where I turned on the light. She then put her phone down. She looked up at me, but I turned and went into my car. I backed out of her driveway. I looked at her before I took off and she was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to pull back in and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had to do with Elle or my family. I boxed all of Elle's things up and put them next to the front door. Legally, this has been her place of residence, so I can't technically kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease. Also, she's the type of person who shies away from conflict, and if she returns other than to pick her things up, there will be plenty of conflict. Anything that had to do with my parents, I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said in my first post, we were a very close family, but I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Elle's parents and told them calling off the engagement and told them she's been cheating on me. I thanked them for everything they've done for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were kind and supportive of me, so this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they would come pick up all of her belongings. I haven't gotten a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come grab her things so Elle doesn't have a reason to come back here. Being cheated on, worst relationship I've ever had. Just to give some context, I'm not a very social person. I just tend to keep a tight circle and hang out every once in a while. Also, I was never the one to mess the hose. Just tried to keep my relationship tightly knit, so it was never no fuck shit. Anyways, me and the homie were gonna go this party. We decided earlier in the day that we were going to the party 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. We all went home to get ready for the party, which was started at 9 p.m. and last till 12 p.m. 1 a.m. if it was popping. It hits around 7 p.m. I hop in the whip to go pick everybody up and pregame a little bit. Drive about 20 minutes to town, hit the liquor store, pick up some Rellos and Crown. I go to the plug and pick up an Oz, then I head to my partner's house and he takes a couple shots. I go pick up the other two bros and finally head to pick up my last homie. We call him and snap him a couple times. He didn't answer, so we just pull and knock on the door. It was all four of us at the door and his cousin answers and is like, "What's up?" I ask, "Is blank here?" His cousin says, "Yeah, he's sleeping." I respond, "Can you wake him up? We're supposed to go to a party." He says, "Yeah, he'll be right back." He shuts the door and comes back after 2 minutes. He opened the door and said, "Come in." So me and my buddies walk in and go to his room. I get around the corner and I see my buddy on the bed. I take a couple steps forward. He hears me and looked towards me, jumped up all at the same time. So I knew some time was up and I stood there. My buddy behind me said that he's got a gun. I was just absolute dumbfounded for 10-15 seconds. I didn't say a word. I turned around and hopped back in the car. After a little while I learned that he didn't want to go to the party, but he didn't have the balls to say it. I acted like a complete asshole, so I was shocked. I knew I had to get turned at the party. We all were pissed off on the ride over but quickly disappeared once we pulled up at around 9:07 p.m. At this time there was a decent amount of PPL. I started rolling and pouring shots. The bros all start talking to shorties and spitting game. Anyways, I'm just chill talking. It's been about an hour. The bro take the girls to cars and doing they thing. So I decide it's my turn. I see some shorty that is so fine, just nice overall. So I just go up next to her and introduce myself, ask if I can sit down, and she was nervous but seemed to like my presence. Asked to sit down next to her and she said yes. I just asked her stuff about herself, and let me tell ya, most women love to talk about themselves. So she was interested. Did a couple more shots and chilled before I had to drive. About 30 minutes later the party was shut down. I can't exactly remember why, but we all had to leave. All the homies was packing in the Jeep. I was grabbing my weed and heading to the car when she approached me and asked for contact info. I couldn't say no. She just glowed and talked with a confidence that lured me in, and she felt a little more comfortable with me. That led to constant text over a couple week period. Then we went to hang out for the first time. We had a walk on a trail to really talk some more and get to know each other. Got to really know the surface level stuff and really how to talk her. On the way back, close to the parking lot, we ran into my bro that was with me at the party. He was taking picture with his family. He saw me and started gassing me up. He asked what we was doing. I told him I just hanging with my girl. At this point we just had flirted, didn't make any bold claim yet. So she blushed and was all shy. We ended up hanging out all day and I went to drop her off. Before she went inside we sat on the steps and she opened up about her life and how she went through a lot of trauma. I related with her and just listened and tried to comfort her. She really liked that I was patient with her and heard out. At the end of talking she was teary-eyed and emotional, but she went in for a kiss. Eventually we kept hanging out and getting closer. We talked all day, all night, hung out every day we could until we tied the knot. A couple weeks after that we claimed we loved each other. We related through trauma, games we were at in life, and among other things. We'd often think about the party and how we really thought about not going and we would have never met. I'm not going to lie, the first part was the honeymoon phase and it seemed great, but all came to a crushing reality. After a couple months of hanging out with just each other, she wanted to have a friend group and just expand our social circle. I was always content with just us, but she insisted that we should, and she wasn't wrong. Anyway, we start hanging with my cousin and his girl a whole bunch. Went on double dates and everything, until my cousin started doing flirting with my girl and I told them they need to stop. They just played it off like it was playful. Anyways, I just sat back and watched. Eventually, a couple months later, I found out that they are texting. The way I found out was we went to visit my cousin friend. I was texting her and she was taking forever to respond. I look over and I see that she was texting my cousin. I was mad as I let her know again that not accepted, had her block him on everything, constantly checked it, and pull up randomly. She just beat around the bush again. Anyway, it all came to them FaceTime and my GF doing sexual things on the phone with him. I cut him off and had my girlfriend block him. That was just the start. She all had some weird dudes on her Snap, either deleting messages or sending them. One time I was sitting next to her and she gets a dick pic from some random dude. At this point we are arguing a whole bunch and she just sits there and denied doing anything. It was the hardest thing I had to deal with. I loved her, so it was hard to let go and think rational. It's crazy though, the amount of acting or believing you own lies, and while bawling your eyes out yelling that you didn't do anything. I would be on the phone for hours telling her it's over and her just begging and lying through her teeth just to have the comfort of someone you can trust. She gaslighted me so much too, saying that she would hurt herself or so on. Anything to coerce me into staying. It is just so frightening, it seems like it has no end. They could murder someone and lie straight to your face about it. It also sucked I helped her with so much of her stuff. I took her everywhere. Work, shopping, out to eat. Anything, anywhere. I did her online schoolwork. I basically got her high school diploma for her, but I asked her for help and she couldn't even help with one piece of work. Also, I forget to add that during all the texting she was also texting her exes as well. She invited me to the high school graduation. I went to support her only to be treated like I was an outsider to her dad and sister because she didn't want to tell them that we were dating. Halfway through, she ran over to her exes to hug and congratulate them. At this point, I felt like I was in the wrong place, so I left, just to get a text like, "WTF, why did you leave? I wanted you here." This whole relationship was me being played. Towards the end, she was too busy to hang out. She was working all week. She couldn't drive to the new place I was at cause it was too far, but I would drive for over a 1.5 before this, taking her wherever. Now that I was the one that needed help, she couldn't show up at all. Nothing from her or any support. I was fed up. I broke with her. She wanted to keep contact, text, and Snapchat. I indulged it for a while, but soon realized I was one of her exes now. She wanted to keep me on the hook in case she needs something, a ride or money. It didn't matter how you felt or if you knew, it only mattered if you were going to do it for her. The moment you are on use, they ditch and leave you with a hole in your heart and pain you can never shake. I'm grateful that I learned from this situation. I know what to look out for and what not to ignore. Remember, never think you're safe. Always stay on alert. Never be on the back foot or caught without the pants. This women nowadays will eat you alive. Trust your gut and instincts. They never fail you unless you ignore them. Believe me, I learned it the hard way. Thank you for watching. Did you enjoy the video? Leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know your opinions on the stories in the comments below. Want to submit a story? Click the Google form in the description.